Leo is going to offer for this academic teaching. We're excited again in fall, and with a whole bunch of new topics and continuing topics as well. So I'd like to introduce Krista McNutt. She's from the Center for Teaching and Learning on the campus. And Krista is the OER project manager over there. So you have a position out here, so congratulations. So yeah, she's going to go over what open educational resources are and a bunch of other really useful stuff for your courses. So.
Great. Well, hi everyone. We've got a small group today, which is actually pretty exciting for me because I have a cold, so I apologize in advance. Don't touch me. One of you shook my hands, and I'm so sorry if you get sick. But you'll probably recognize as I go through this is my last day. This is so exciting. I'm just gonna, my energy is gonna pull me right through. And hopefully you glean from that as we go through how exciting open educational resources are. I think before we actually get started, because we are a small group, I wonder if we could just kind of go around and mention what we do in extension or what we teach or what our area is, just to give me a little bit of insight and for our colleagues as well. So maybe we can start over here.
I'm Rebecca. I am with the communications and design. That is group. Yeah, I'm a support staff.
Great.
So I just want to know, I don't teach, but I would like to know how the students are communicated in what the instructor when they're teaching. So in case students ask me something, then I will be able to answer.
Right. That's fabulous. So you're in communications and design. Did you say that that's one of your areas? Mm-hmm. And absolutely, with open education, as I'll get into the details of it, anyone who supports teaching, that's our bread and butter. Like that's where this movement gets started, right? Because we can help the instructors start to use these resources and find more options and know what their options are. So that's fabulous. Nice to meet you. How about you, Mimi?
Well, next to Rebecca, my name is Mimi Hui. I am the executive director of a new unit called ICE, International Community Engagement,
Ooh.
And for the Faculty of Extension. So I guess one of the many things that I aspire to do is create new programming, and I think this topic is long overdue for me to learn, and love to hear more about it and learn from you.
Wonderful. Yeah, community engagement, I can absolutely see the connection. Exciting.
Yeah.
Good. Do we want to go right through the Leo people, or you want to?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the team lead of the Learning Engagement Office. I used to work with Mimi down in the English language program, it's called back then. Mm-hmm. So I taught there as well, I've done some research, and now into the management.
Great.
I'm Kim. I work in the Learning Engagement Office as well as an e-learning support specialist. So I help build the courses and provide support on them. I'm really interested in the field of OER, just kind of spreading the word to everybody and what other benefits they have besides saving costs for students.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, and we'll do a little zigzag.
Sorry, Chris, interjected. Kim is kind of our, she's learning the most about OER in our group. Mm-hmm. So if the instructors and staff have questions, Kim is kind of the front person for us.
So you're going to be a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking forward
to. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
So Kim's the go-to.
Yeah, Kim is
awesome. Wonderful. All right, we'll do zigzag.
I'm Lana Wiskijak, a new faculty member here in Faculty of Extension, and I'm with Communications and Design. So I do the Indigenous Arts integrated courses. I'll be teaching my first course next month, actually.
Wonderful. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Good. Best of luck in your first semester. Hello. Hi. And?
I'm Caroline. I'm an instructor at in the Faculty Extension for the OHS program for fundamentals of auditing, and I just want to see if there are some potential resources that we're going to be able to bring into the classroom for students.
Great. Perfect. We're just doing brief introductions just to chat about what we teach or what area we focus on in extension. So would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Kent Rondo, and I teach in the MACE program.
Oh, okay.
And also the business leadership stream. So.
Great. And MACE, Masters of Arts in Communication?
Community Engagement.
Community Engagement. Ah,
yeah.
okay. And so you see Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm also with the Learning Engagement Office, similar role as Jim as a learning support specialist. I'm all the way over here because I'm managing the online portion of this presentation. So far, we don't have anybody online, but hopefully that'll change.
And at the very least, we're recording it. So
Yeah.
if anyone couldn't make it, I know some of you have colleagues that couldn't make it today, then it'll be online as well. So
Yeah, for those not aware, we record all of our PD sessions and we have them available online for free.
all right. And how sneaky of me, I didn't introduce myself that much. I mean, all of you go first. So I'm Krista, and Brian introduced me some, and I'll just give you a bit of a background on what I'm doing here and what I do with CTL. So the Center for Teaching and Learning, which is on the main campus, we've started up a new initiative. It's very similar to some of the other teaching and learning grant programs that are on campus, where we help instructors enhance their teaching, essentially. And so this one that we started up, we looked to partner with instructors to help them find open educational resources. Now, this fund is a small fund, so a big part of the investment on campus is my position and some positions in libraries, where we actually work with instructors and help them find open educational resources and learn more about what they can find and what they can use in their courses. So I'm definitely partnering with the Leo group and helping build that expertise. And I lean on them tremendously because a lot of my work has been with faculty on the main campus. But I have experience teaching as a corporate instructor as well, so I kind of relate to you, but I haven't done a lot of support that way yet, so kind of in the middle. So, first question I have for you, I'm going to pull up a Venn diagram, and I want you to think about, as an instructor, or as a student, you can choose whichever direction you want to focus, what has been one of the barriers for your students in learning? It doesn't have to fit in one of these buckets, but I'm going to try and fit it in one of these buckets. So if anyone thinks of something right away, so if it's someone coming into your classroom and they're having a hard time absorbing the knowledge that you're providing, or maybe they're having a difficult time accessing the location of your classroom, anything like that. Anyone have any ideas? Yeah, Brian?
Well, one has been access. We used to have difficulties with books coming into the bookstore and getting access that way. Sometimes cost did come into play as well.
Okay. So in terms of resources for teaching, it wasn't always cost of the book, it was also the fact that it might not be available.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anyone else have ideas? Yeah.
I actually have one, follow what Brian just said. A lot of times when we buy books that have an online component, it has a code along with the book.
Yeah.
But some students, whether they're aware or not aware of it, they buy the used book. So now they got a book, but then they don't have access to the online website support. So it's always been a problem because we would say, well, you actually spend your money for nothing. Now you have to go back to the bookstore to get the new copy.
Right, because you're relying on those online resources as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. All right. Any other examples? Yeah.
I think for the work that I've done is finding the information that supports specifically, like we're in Treaty 6, which has like Cree and Dakota and Métis, and so it's diverse indigenous groups. So it's hard to find something that's specific to Cree, and often as an artist, that's what I do, is to create online like digital stories that are specific to the stories within my circles to help support the work I'm doing. Is often I have to create the resources because there isn't any out there.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. So they just don't exist right now.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to just bounce around in these little circles for a second, because really what we see when we talk about open education, and I know I haven't defined it yet, but when we talk about open education, there's usually 3 different groups of perspectives, and they quite often overlap. You know, I can fit myself in all 3 of these categories. But certainly open educational resources and selecting open educational resources to use in your classroom can reduce cost to students. So it can be something that can eventually, in some disciplines, replace the textbook even. And that's some ways that ministries and governments and institutions assess the return on investment for using OER. That's one of the benefits. The second one here, access and discovery. So if anyone here has worked with a librarian, they'll know this is the cheerleader side of it for libraries. Having resources that are accessible to students and easily discoverable. So open educational resources, by nature, they're intended to be something that's freely available, freely accessible, and easy to find online. So you can just type in Google and it's going to come up for you. And then quality and pedagogy. So that's the other side of it, and this is the controversial topic that everyone kind of likes to talk back and forth, because open educational resources are similar to customized software. That's kind of how I like to counter it. You may or may not want to go that full customized route, where you have a resource that you're using in your classroom that you can fully customize. Because with customization sometimes comes the question of quality and how to assess how quality that resource is. But on the other side of it, your teaching can be so further enriched because you can customize it and make it really special to your students and really align with their learning objectives and what they need. So those are sort of the three different areas of focus that we look at. And quite often I find that the barriers that people mention for their students or for their own instructional practice align in these three categories. So now that I've just kind of spattered through that, I'm going to get into what is OER. Does anyone know what an open educational resource is yet? Definition's right there. So it's a freely accessible, openly licensed resource. So just to simplify it, it's an educational resource. So what kind of things do you use to teach with? It could be a textbook, it could be a video, it could be an audio file, it could be an article, it could be an image that you use in one of your PowerPoints. It could be a whole PowerPoint lesson.
What does it mean to be licensed versus not licensed?
I'll get into that very soon. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things, the biggest hurdles, because that's the question mark, right? Is how do I know that I'm allowed to use it? How do I know it's open? All those things. So some examples from our own campus. Here we've got three. So online open genetics, that's a textbook that one of the faculty members on campus has written, and it's fully open. So that means that people can actually take this textbook and they can edit and remix it, they can revise it, and then they can redistribute it. So he's given people a lot of freedom to take the content he developed and change it. And that means a lot for another instructor because they can really customize that for their classroom and work with their students in different ways as well. Another one is open physics, and this one's almost an online portal. So it's a website that changes the way you can navigate some of the knowledge areas that he's teaching around physics. And physics is an area where people are pretty in the know around open education. So this aligns with a lot of other resources that are out there. He's been able to build on open educational resources that exist as well. And Surgery 101, I don't know if anyone's heard of Surgery 101. I find someone in the room usually has. And it's a podcast series. So this is one of the examples that helps me explain that open educational resources really can be anything. Because this is a podcast series that is openly licensed, which means someone could take that audio file and they could split it up and use it and put it back out on the internet. And the creators have given them permission to do that. Okay? So when I talk about open, I'm going to take a moment just to chew my cough drop because it's very small now. There we go. So when I talk about open, some people will have heard the word open in a different context. And I'm really talking about education, but some of you may have experienced using open software. I know for myself, I didn't have a Microsoft Word license for so long, and I went online and found this open Word version, and it's a software that someone developed out of the goodness of their heart so that I could edit documents for free. That's an example of open technology. And there's all these different examples across there, but thank goodness I don't have to look at all of them. I'm only talking about one, education, that's it. So we're talking about curriculum, educational resources, and most commonly textbooks because that's the one that the funding initiatives are able to measure the impact on quite often. So, I love these diagrams. Aren't they beautiful? I wish I drew it, but I didn't. Basically what I want you to look at here is right down here, retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. So in the open education world, that's what we rely on to identify that it's an open educational resource. So if you have a resource in your hand, and once you know that the licensing is good, which we'll talk about in a minute, then you know that you can retain a copy of it. That means it's an OER. So I can give my students a copy and it's theirs. They have a PDF copy, they're allowed to keep it forever. And there's no copyright issues with that. They can reuse it so they can do what they want with it now that they've left the classroom or while they're in the classroom. they can revise it. So the students and the instructors are allowed to take that content, remix it, revise it, change it however they want. And when I say remix, I mean taking a couple of resources and mixing them together. So you could take 2 resources, maybe it's 2 chapters from a textbook, and you can rewrite it if you want to, because the creator told you that you can. So you're allowed to do that. And then the key to it all, sharing it with others. So we're not doing all this just to kind of keep it in our computer files and keep it for ourselves and keep the knowledge within our own classroom. We're doing this to send it out into the world. This is beyond our classroom and this is beyond our institution, but it's to trickle into the other institutions and to the informal learners as well. And I know from the group that we have here, you're all teaching professionals. So you know that these professionals are looking for resources that they can learn beyond the classroom. They can't go to full-time school and be put in that regular, rigorous routine. They're looking for continuous development. And so by redistributing this, we're really sharing beyond the classroom and adding to the collection of OER. So what is an OER? I talked about this a little bit already. There's a big list of different examples. Videos, full courses, so there's even full courses that are open. So an instructor takes their course outline, their lesson plans, all the resources that they're teaching with, their PowerPoints, and the access to that portal, and they make it open so that anyone can learn from it. So an example could be MIT OpenCourseWare, in case anyone's kind of gone on there and looked around at some open classes. Oh, that's a bad slide. Here we go. So this quote I just love. This helps me connect to what the real goal is. So this is Malcolm Gladwell, and he's saying, innovation, the heart of the knowledge economy, is fundamentally social. So when we look at open educational resources, and we're looking at taking something we teach with and making it open, and making it so other people can edit it, other people can change it, we're stepping into the social way of teaching, and we're making it so that people can respond to us. As an instructor, I'm giving my PowerPoints or my lesson plan to someone else, putting it out in the world and letting them take it, and then maybe they'll come back to me and say, hey, I taught that same lesson, and then I added this resource in and it worked really well. Or I'm teaching this different demographic and they responded this way, and then I can move forward and do something different or something the same or any of those things. So it's really just pushing yourself into that social realm of being what we call an open educator. And I would say contributing to professional practice as well, and stepping into that space, which I'm sure quite a lot of you already do. So here's the bread and butter of it. How do we know that it's an open educational resource? The very most simple thing I can tell you is look for a license. This is what it looks like. It'll be somewhere in the package. On mine, I kind of go to town and I put every single slide because I just want people to know. But sometimes you'll find something, maybe it's a PDF and a full report, and that little diagram or that little image is on the back or the front, and it's not on every page. Sometimes you just have to look for it. The catch is that there's different types of licensings. So the sheet that I gave you, we're going to go through a little bit today so that you'll be able to know if you find a resource that you want to use in your classroom, you'll be able to look at this sheet and say, what can I really do with this content in my class? Am I allowed to change it, or am I not allowed to change it? Am I allowed to remix it with other content, or is that frowned upon? So this is as simple as it is. Now, if you're creating content, depending on your status, of your instructor status on the campus, you could be keeping your copyright, or you could be going through the U of A with your copyright. So I'm not going to go too detailed into that because I think everyone in here is in a different status, but definitely work with the Leo office to navigate that. And I kind of do the same thing. With every instructor I'm working with, I work with the copyright office on that because copyright's not something you want to really dig into on your own. You don't want to have the professionals working with you on it. But certainly, if you're working with students and they're creating resources in their assignments, they own the intellectual property and the copyright of that content they're creating. And if they choose to put an open license on what they're creating, that doesn't change their copyright. They still have the IP, and they're just assigning an open license to it. And that's their choice to do that. Okay? How do I sign an open license? Well, 2 steps. Basically, you go to the Creative Commons website, and Creative Commons is the most common version of open licensing for educational content. There are other open licenses, but I don't bother getting into them very often because this is the main piece. Go to the Creative Commons website and choose a license. It's really simple. And I can easily go through that if we have time. Basically, it gives you some of the outline of what I'll go through with you today so that you can see what choices you want to make. So you're selecting, do I want to allow people to remix and revise this content? Do I want to allow them to reuse it? This is kind of the scale that's mirrored on the sheet that I gave you, where there's two at the very bottom of your sheet that we don't really consider OER in the educational world. Because Creative Commons licenses are not just for educational resources, they're used for anything. So artists and musicians, writers, they're all using these licenses as well. And so they're using them sometimes in a professional or a corporate manner as well. So there's a broader range that applies to education. And all you do is you mark your resource with the license. So I copied and pasted from the website. Once I chose the license I wanted, I just highlighted it, copied, and pasted to here. That's all I had to do. I wanted to give you guys some examples, but before I jump into those, I am going to return to the licensing after the examples, but does anyone have any questions right now?
Can you dictate how long that license can stand? Or once it's open, it's open?
It's open, it's open. You could revoke it, but because it's already been, if you published, say if you publish an article or a report or something, you put an open license on it, put it online, the people who have accessed it and pulled it to retain it, they have a copy of it with the open license. They can then use it in that way. But you can change your mind later and remove it if you want to. Yeah. But it's kind of like putting it out to the Wild West for a bit of time and then bringing it back. Yeah.
Is that usually a problem? Let's say that you've written a case and you had an open license on it, and then there was an offer to get it published. And the publisher obviously was not interested in an open license.
Okay.
But with that would allow you to then to rescind the open license. But what would be the legal ramifications? A lot of people would have a copy of the case, but they wouldn't be able to come back at those people who have a copy that was secured through an open license.
Right.
Going forward.
There's kind of two pieces I'm thinking about when I look at that. And I'm not qualified to answer this question, but I'm going to try to anyway. So one thing I'll say is some of the content that you may have in the resource you created may be licensed as share alike, which is one of the licenses we'll talk about. And they stipulate that if you're going to use their open content, you have to put it in an open resource. And so that would be a challenge for them. If they saw that content then going into a closed publication, they may come through and seek some ramifications around that. The other side of that is, and now I've lost my train of thought. The other side of that really is, I think, along the publisher's lines.
I could see them being a little bit antsy about it all, given the fact that it's been in the open environment, and now they want to be able to control it in terms of its distribution. Yeah,
and I think that's case by case. But certainly, if you're the creator of the content, that is your right. You can pull the open license back if you want to. I've been working in the open world for about 4 years now with educators primarily.
Does the copyright have the same restrictions in terms of a patent, where you have a time period in which the patent, if you have a patented product, you have a certain time period, it was traditionally 17 years, I think it's more than that. But does a copyright actually have a time horizon on it where the copyright no longer becomes secure? In other words, everything goes to the open market, like music, for instance, after I think 50 years.
That's exactly.
But does a book or a pedagogical piece of work after a period of time actually then become open regardless of where it is?
Absolutely. So anything created by an individual, so anything that you create is automatically copyrighted. And I think it's 50 years after. So 50 years after the creator is deceased, it then moves into the public domain. So it automatically, the copyright is removed. So that's one category of open educational resources that you can look at. It's anything in the public domain, whether the copyright has expired or the creator has decided to put it in the public domain from the beginning. Yeah.
And you could do it at any time.
Yeah.
Obviously, unless it was secured somewhere else where there were restrictions.
Yeah, the library on campus works with individuals who are looking to, say if they've published content with a publisher and then they're looking to take it into the open, they actually will work with individuals who are working through the contract ramifications of that or
would you sign a contract with a publisher with that as an option?
Yeah.
Is that a normal practice where you weren't sure you know, if you wanted to move it into the open environment, but you wanted the option being able to do that. Is that something that you can actually have them actually write into your publication agreement?
Yeah. And in a lot of cases too, and I mean, I haven't been involved in those negotiations, but I know that they happen and I know that they're common. And I also know that in a lot of cases, sometimes it's the publisher that just isn't aware of some of the details of your situation. So say if you're putting research into this publication, and the research has been funded by a certain entity that requires it's open after 1 year, then that's required in your agreement anyway. And so it's just navigating that process and making sure you have your ducks in a row, and then you're able to go open. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Do we have anyone online yet?
No, not yet. This is the first session we've run. There hasn't been anyone online.
Okay.
My apologies.
That's okay. We're recording anyway. So some examples for us. So this is a really great example because this is through University of British Columbia, and they launched an initiative where they basically partnered faculty members with students to create case studies. And the goal there was for them to be interdisciplinary and open licensed. This way they have broad impact to multiple disciplines. Various instructors can take them and use them in their classes, and they're open in the fact that you can reuse them, you can remix them. Students can take that case study into the classroom and rewrite the whole thing and then republish it if they want to. And so then we've got different versions of it. Maybe they go and do interviews and then add to it and put it back out onto the web. So there's quite a few case studies to look at here. Quite a few of them are environmental right now because it is it's only been around for a couple of years, so those are the disciplines that have really engaged in it. But it kind of helped me look at it and think, even if I'm teaching business, I can take a case study like this and use it in my business class. It doesn't have to be a specific discipline. I can navigate that interdisciplinary. Another example, my background's project management, so I always have to have this in here. But project management for instructional designers. So this is a book that was written by an instructor with his students. So it was actually written by his students. So I actually said that wrong. Not by the instructor and his students. And what he did is he did activities just like this. So he had them go through an existing open textbook. This open textbook was written by an instructor or by a professional in the field, and it didn't quite align with the PMI standards. So the Project Management Institute, they have their frameworks that you have to align with to be a designate of theirs. And this open textbook that he found online didn't quite align with that, so it wasn't quite relevant to his students. So instead of saying, oh, I'll just go back to the PMBOK and make everyone buy a $60 book, he decided to take the book that wasn't quite right and have his students make it right because it was open licensed. So they took each chapter and they aligned it with what the PMP requires for their designation exams. He went through and had them, do interviews and collect case study examples to align that chapter with industry examples that helped them make it more localized, so it was really relevant to what he was teaching. Now, in this case, he's teaching instructional designers about project management. So naturally, he's going to have them interviewing people who are doing instructional design, and that's really relevant to the field. Another example of things, and I think this was really cool, is he took sections of the chapter of the textbook that were already good to go, or sections that maybe his students have already revamped, and then he had the students create activities or assignments or different types of media around it. So one student may have taken that text and narrated it, so then now it's an audiobook. Different examples like that. And that gives them a chance to have an additional reflection on it where they're going into the material enough, they're critically assessing it, and maybe they've decided to rewrite part of that while they're writing it, while they're audio recording it, because they realize this doesn't quite align with what I would want other students to read. Yeah?
Cases often have teaching notes, and teaching notes, obviously, you want to put restrictions on that, even though the case, you may want to make it an open copyrighted case, but the notes themselves, how would you secure restrictions on teaching notes or wanting them to go if they're going to be used pedagogically? How would you put restrictions on the teaching notes but want the case to be completely freely available?
Absolutely. There's definitely some solutions for that because I know that I've seen through BC Campus, they use a lot of open educational resources in BC, and they have a provincial repository. So it's a provincial collection of OER for instructors to go to, and they've created little sections where you have to get a login to get that piece. So you have to contact, they just have that one little barrier
Right.
for you to go to the next step. And some, there's all these people out there that would argue, oh, it's not open if there's a login, whatever works for the instructor.
But you
right?
want instructors to have access to that, but not the students.
Exactly.
And they would align with those open resources.
Yeah. Another excellent example of that is there's instructors that are doing, part of their assignments is they have their students create the exam before they go into it. And so obviously you don't want to open license and open publish the exam, but you could open license it for others to use and then put it behind a little bit of a login. And at the U of A, certainly the library could support us in doing that. There could be a spot in their repository where you have your resources in there, and then you maybe have a login spot for the additional piece. Yeah. Good, yeah.
We actually have a project management series here in Extension that uses 2 OER textbooks. That, of course, has been redesigned around that. So that's been very successful. So
Wonderful.
thanks for you.
Oh, I have to shift my slides so I can represent that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have to find out what they're using.
I'll pull that and send it to you.
Okay, I would love that. Good. And it's really interesting because this is where some people get really uncomfortable. It depends on their students and their level of teaching they're doing. If they're at a level 100 class, so a lot of instructors are scared to go to this level and have their students creating stuff. And it's just really uncomfortable for them. And some people just jump right into it because they realize, at the same time, you can have your students developing your course with you. And then the next students go through and develop the next stage with you. And it's just community created. So as I mentioned, BC Campus. This is an example of a resource that I wanted to take a peek at with you guys. So this is a resource that's specifically for Canadian language benchmarking. So this is for ESL and teaching English as a second language. This is a resource that was developed by a collaboration across Norquest and Bow Valley College. So Alberta Resources created. And they've filed this into the BC Campus repository. And if I open it up, what I like about this is just the main page of where I found it on here. Sorry, my mouse is a little bit sticky. But if I scroll down, there's all these different options. So they have the instructor resources, the student resources, audio files, video files. They have everything available in a Word file as editable, so that if you don't want to use the pretty version, you can take the ugly version and make it your own and put your own versions into it. I don't know that it's actually ugly. I haven't looked at the Word version. But you can also go on and read the book online. So this is opening on the Norquest website, and they're hosting it here. And you can go through and read the different pages here. If I can, I'm just failing at clicking, I'm sorry, but here we go. So we're going through some activities around language that they have in the textbook. So this is one of the next levels, right, where they've obviously had instructional design support in their institutions to have it on a really engaging method. Some people write textbooks that are purely on a Google Doc, and they've made it look pretty, but it's not technically supported. It's just a Google Doc, and it's nice and easy. But this is a good example just because I like how it has its textbook, it has a course package, has instructor resources, has student resources, so you can kind of take this whole pack and then step into a classroom because you've got almost all the different pieces that potentially even a publisher could give them, but it's free and it's open. All right, so step into an activity. So just a little reminder before we jump into the activity, and when I'm going through the licensing, which is the funnest part of it all, that beautiful diagram that I showed you, it's just a breakdown of it. So remix, revise, reuse, retain, redistribute. That's what we consider an OER. And that means we can combine, we can use it in a variety of ways. We can make it on a copy, and most important of all, we can redistribute it. So we can share it with other people, the instructor or the students can share it out. It's not limited that way. And a lot of people think sometimes that if you find something online and it's free, that it's open. And that's not necessarily true. Certainly there's value to that because you can give it to your students, use it for free, that's fantastic. But can you reuse it and can you revise it? It depends on the license they put on it, and quite often it's not open licensed. Okay? So, let's look at our sheet. So this handy dandy sheet is something I made for myself. And then I just started using it. And I open licensed it because everything I used to make it was open licensed, so I was able to do that. And this helps you understand all the different licenses you could encounter if you're finding a resource online that's open. Now, you'll notice that I don't have the images on here just because it's get really busy. So it's just the letters that people usually get intimidated by. And so I want to break them down for you. So let's turn back here, and I'm going to break down some of the descriptors here. Am I going to be vocal enough? So, CC BY. This one is the most open license that you could apply to something that you create unless you make it public domain. So the difference between the top two here, public domain means I'm putting it out on the internet, anyone can use it and they don't have to attribute me. So I can just take it, put it in, I don't have to put a source, I don't have to say I got it from Kristen McNett, anything like that. CC BY is what most commonly open educators are using. The reason for that is because it's fully open, so you can see all the 5 R's are checked off. We can do all the things we want to do with it, and that's what I want other instructors to do with my resource. It's all checked off. But they still have to attribute me. So they still have to say, you know, Kristen McNutt made this resource and use their source and link back to me. And hopefully that means when they link back to me, then people will find the other resources I created and learn even more. So that's the whole goal and the whole cycle. And hopefully beyond that, they'll also tell me that they're using it and how they used it and how wonderful it was and what they did. And I'll learn from them. So those are the top 2, and that's usually where I try and steer people if I'm hoping they're going to go all the way open, but it's always an individual choice. The third one here, SA. So this stands for share alike. And this one usually confuses people. It confused me for a very long time, until last week, really. And so share alike really means you can use my resource and you can do all the R's, but you have to use it in the license that I gave it. So you can't take my resource and make it CC BY or make it public domain. But if it's CC BY, you could change it. You could go up or down the scale because I'm giving you that permission. But my original source will still be CC BY. You still have to give me attribution. So eventually if someone follows a little clicking trail, they'll find my resource too.
But you're not allowed to change the document or to remix the document.
You can remix it and change it.
Or you can't.
But you have to reference that it is SA. So what a lot of people default to is they'll end up using a resource that is SA as an appendix or something just because it's easier and it makes their life a lot easier. But if they're working with someone or if they have a lot of skills in referencing and doing the source.
So the difference would be is that you can distribute it versus the CC BY, they have to go to the original source in order to get it.
No, you can still redistribute. Yeah, the only difference between CC BY and CC SA is that you have to make sure that you're maintaining that license.
Okay.
So you have to respect the original license that it was used with.
Okay.
So I think a good example that I would say is that say if I was creating a video, if I had students creating a video and I was having them mix videos together, say if they have 3 sections of the video that they're piecing together, or maybe it's an audio or something like that. This section, they're reusing content that's CC BY, and this section they're reusing content that's CC BY, but this section is CC BY SA. Excuse my messy writing. This section, I would be very careful of their referencing. This is CC BY SA. Because so much of it is more open than this section here, I don't want people to get confused. So I'm just making sure that we're respecting the choice that the creator made. Yeah. This is why when you're really remixing things, it's finding the right resources and making sure you understand the licensing, so then you can have the freedom to use it in your classroom. Yeah. So this one, I have to admit people tend to avoid it, just for that reason. They kind of look at it and they think, oh, I'll use it as a resource and I'll leave it as it is and I won't remix it because I don't know how. And it confuses people. So if I'm creating something, I don't usually do share alike because I'm confusing people. Yeah. Non-commercial. This is another one that I commonly see instructors choosing because if you're creating an educational resource and you're redistributing it generally you want other people to redistribute it in the same nature and use it for education and keep it free. Now, if you don't have NC on the resource that you're creating, if you're not licensing it as non-commercial, a commercial entity could take that resource and plug it into something commercialized and charge for it. They have the freedom to do that. You're licensing CC BY, you're licensing and letting them do that. And that might be okay with you, or it might not be okay with you.
Does that not destroy the commons, though, the fact that somebody has appropriated something in the public sector that now makes it into the private sector? Is that seems to me, at least philosophically, it's kind of offensive in the sense that you've taken something in the commons and decided to privatize it.
Absolutely. Yep. And everyone has a bit of a different opinion on that. I mean, commonly, open educators do have that same opinion. They say that's offensive. I don't want someone to take my content and monetize it. And so they put that NC license.
So the NC is really to keep the original intent of the producer,
yeah,
to make sure that it wasn't commercialized.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you could also kind of go on the flip side of it and say, well, the open educators are going to take my resource and reuse it in the nature I intended. I put CC BY. And there's lots of educators that are not using open content and are using published resources, so maybe my content will also make it to those students. And then you're kind of expanding who can access what you've created. So there's kind of two sides of the coin to look at, and it's just up to each individual. So this is non-commercial. So really, if you find something to use in your classroom, it's fine if it's not commercial because you're not going to be monetizing it. You're just using it in an educational resource, in an educational reason. But if you were going to be doing something professional with it and developing something that will be monetized, then look at the licensing and make sure that you're okay. Okay? And then what about ND? If you look at your chart on the bottom, there's two NDs. There's a non-commercial ND, and then there's CC BY ND. And ND stands for non-derivative. So we look at revise and remix, it says personal use only. And then for the NCND, it says redistribution is non-commercial. So is that an OER? So we can't really remix it, because I could remix it in my bedroom, keep it on my computer, and that's it, right? It's not really making it anywhere. So that's not an open resource. You may find good resources out there for educational purposes that you want to use in your classroom, and that's great. They're still free, they're still online, it's still something you can use, but it wouldn't really be considered an OER because you can't remix it. Okay?
What would be the benefit for the producer to keep it a non-derivative? Since if you can't remix, you have to keep it as the original intent has to be there. You can't.
Yeah. What I see is, because I'm working mostly with professors, what I see is professors who have experienced publishing open access research. And so they say, okay, I'm used to creating something that is going to be freely available on the web, but people can't mess with it. It's PDF and people can't edit it, and it's mine and it's going to stay that way. And so then when they go into the education side of it, they choose this license because that's their comfort zone. They're like, this is my safety net, people can't really change it.
At some point, as things get remixed, it really moves a long, long way away from the mind of the creator. And at some point, you might even say that it has a different intent. You can actually use it to, in some ways, you can use it for nefarious purposes.
Absolutely, it's really scary for people to put their stuff into the commons because you don't know what someone's going to do with it. And so it feels very risky to people, and sometimes it really is risky. Depending on your discipline, you may or may not want to open license something, and it's an individual choice. And it is very scary for people. I find, as in my role, I have people coming to me that have created something, and they just haven't had a lot of support around creating it. So they wanted to do it, but they didn't really know how. And usually, they have CC BY and CND, so they have the most strongest closed license here, but they don't even know why they have it. They just said, I wanted to create an OER, so I used Creative Commons. I was kind of nervous, so I did this. And then my question to them is usually, oh, okay, so have you had instructors remixing your content and coming back to you? And they're like, yeah, I have, and you know, but some people come to me and say, I don't really know how to remix it, and I don't know what to say to them. And so I kind of just navigate that way, seeing what their intent is. If they want people to remix it, and usually they do, they just don't realize that they've licensed it wrong. And they were just nervous at the beginning, so they did that. Sometimes it takes a couple of years of deciding what you're going to do with it. Oh, thank you. Oh. That was just kind of finicky.
All right.
So, any specific questions around this? So I want to jump into a little activity. What we'll think about. Yeah.
Do you know who was the body behind creating this and who maintains it?
Yeah. They're called the Creative Commons. So Creative Commons licensing is the licensing I'm talking about. They're a nonprofit organization, and they're all about creating the commons. So it's all about sharing. And they have a really wonderful quote that I wish I had here. Something like, the more I share, the more I learn, or something like that. And they've created this structure purely to support people in moving beyond copyrighted content and creating more access. And just to empower people to make that choice and to help them have that structure in place. And it really was born out of one legal case that was really interesting. And if you're a legal case buff, then go read up on it because it's pretty interesting. Of some content that was used in an educational setting that then just kind of went in the wrong direction. And they were like, well, we need something to address this so people are empowered to make choices around their copyright, because we're automatically copyrighted when we create something. But what if I want people to be able to edit it? How do I tell them that?
Are you saying that Creative Commons is not copyrighted, or it is copyrighted but it has been made open?
Yes.
So it has been copyrighted, but the copywriting is, everything has to be copyrighted, but in this case it's part of the Creative Commons. It's put there so that it has accessibility, but the overall thing itself has copyright.
Yes, the way I like
allows you to modify it, I guess, going forward.
The way I understand, or the way it makes sense to me, is anything I create is automatically copyrighted. And I'm just layering on a Creative Commons license to tell people what I'm letting them do.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to restrict, you don't have to change the copyright. It's there and permanent.
It's already copyrighted.
Yeah.
What is the hierarchy of check and balance in this environment? Because in one of your examples, it's empowering students to adapt the open source material, create a different textbook, so to speak. So is the check and balance is the ownership of the student, or there is another layer of making sure what is put in the material is actually correct?
I think it depends on the scenario that you're in. So if we take the example of doing an activity in the classroom, so I've got an open textbook, I know it's CC BY, the whole textbook is, and I'm going to have my students rewrite a chapter of it. And maybe I know that the textbook isn't quite what I want, or maybe it's great and I'm just having them critically assess it. That whole textbook is CC BY, so I'm fairly safe, right? If I've got a whole smattering of resources in front of me, then I may want to rely on my instructional support team to just validate what am I doing with my students, what am I asking them to do, and what do I have in front of me, just so that I can know that I'm not setting them up to redistribute something that's licensed incorrectly. Yeah. Anything else?
It's scary.
It is kind of scary, right? Which is why I'm so thankful that our campus is really supporting this movement, because instructors are asking for it. So when I speak to leadership on this, my big selling point is students are asking for it and our instructors are already doing it anyway.
Yeah,
so why don't we just create support for it?
Regulated.
I'm so sorry, my phone must be. How professional, right? It should have happened at the very beginning and I made it all relaxed. You don't have to worry about Krista's phone going off. So do we want to jump into the activity, or do you guys have any pressing questions?
Do you see this picking up momentum in the general public? Because it's a really chain of reference that people have to go through. So do you see people changing their ideas about their intellectual property in education and teaching?
I don't know how to answer that question. I've been so in the education world, and I know that there's artists that are publishing their content as open. I know that there's a really interesting musician named Amanda Palmer, and she basically, she's like a really cool artist, right? She does Coach Surface to do her tours and stuff like that, and she open license all of her music. And so it's really, and she speaks on it. She has a TED Talk on this. on how it changes her relationship with her audience and with other musicians and things like that. But it's really about, I think it really depends on your industry and your discipline and the culture in that environment. I think that's what I'm seeing, because even in different faculties, there's a different buy-in, right? Different faculty members and different groups are more open to this or more closed to it because just of the culture in their environment and their discipline. Did I answer your question or just avoid it?
No, it's not an easy question.
No, it's not.
But yeah, no, that's.
Okay.
We used to just about lock it up in a safe.
Yeah, we did.
So this is quite a shift of paradigm.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Well, there's so many pieces when you think about open, and not just the resources, but just open. You know, right now, students can sign up for classes at the U of A, and the syllabus is not open to them until they've actually registered.
Yes.
So that's something that Students' Union is really pushing for, because they want that to be open. And so there's all these different, it's a whole value system that spans across everything we do. And the more you step into it, the more of a community that you're exposed to, and the more you start doing and the more value you find from it. Yeah.
Kind of a silly question, but copyright is one issue, but universities with tech transfer and IP are very interested in revenue that can be generated through patents.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a movement towards creating open-ended patents where, and I could see universities with a pushback there.
Yeah.
In particular, certain faculties with certain patents potentially can be lucrative to the university.
Yeah.
Invention. So
yeah.
I'm just wondering, I know in copyright there's much less money involved, and the money usually just goes to the professor. If he writes a textbook, it usually just goes to the professor. But
yeah.
And you've indicated that the university is very supportive of ideas like the Creative Commons, but are there limits to that in terms of the university's enthusiasm?
Yeah, and I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that there is an answer to that right now. I think it would be case by case, because it's kind of a new space to step into. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there actually is even a case on campus right now that we could look to. We just don't know about it yet.
Especially when you can redistribute for profit, right?
Yeah.
They're check there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So one question I'll pose to you guys, it'll be kind of my pretend exercise. Let's decide that we're going to do an activity. So I don't know what course we're teaching, maybe it doesn't matter. But let's decide that we want to do an activity with our students. So we're going to look to the wall again behind us. We'll go back here, and I'm going to erase this and use it. So let's decide we're going to have 3 resources that we're using. So the first question I have for you is, what licenses should we choose? How challenging should this activity be? I mean, one resource that we have is CC BY. That's the easy choice. And then NC. Sure, okay. CC BY NC. And let's say share alike, just to make it really scary. Okay, so let's say you've come in to teach a course and someone has given you 3 resources you can use to do with your students to teach them about some specific topic. I don't even care what it is. Whatever. Let's decide what we're going to do. So, this is an example. Let's say, let me circle back to this one. What do I want the students to do?
Add to the textbook.
Add to the textbook. Okay, so we have an open textbook in front of us that is CC by NC. Because the creator was like, no, you can't take that and use it as a publisher. Don't redistribute it for money. And then we're rewriting textbooks. So what if we also have a whole bunch of images? Let's say we have 12 images. Maybe they're process diagrams, maybe they're some sort of industry-specific images, and maybe images of some equipment that they would use in their discipline, something like that. But they're all CC BY. So we can do whatever we want with them. What's the third resource that we have in front of us? Doing an interview with a professional. CC by Sarah Light. Yeah?
Videos.
So video interview. Okay. So I want my students to look at a chapter of this textbook, and I want them to consider how to integrate some of these images, which ones apply to that chapter that are going to be relevant to the readers of that textbook, and at what timestamp do I want the students to listen to this interview. Let's say it's 4 hours long or something ridiculous. It's a lecture. So maybe that's the exercise that I give my students. Right, I give them the textbook, I assign them the chapter to look at. So, chapter 2, I want you to edit chapter 2, and I want you to look through this collection of images and consider which images can be integrated into the chapter to enhance the reading experience for the other students. And I want you to listen to 20 minutes of this and pull out some quotes that are then going to be sidebars for the chapter. Would that work?
Don't you have to get the license first?
So we already know that we've got some licensing here in front of us. So we know that they can rewrite the textbook. We know that they have to keep this intact. They have to respect this license. So since it's a video, we could take a chunk of it and give it to the textbook and have it linked and just have the 20-minute section used, and then we're keeping it respectful.
So you're keeping the link, and the link is the validity of you're not changing the video in any way because the link itself goes to that.
Even if I had, say if I was working as an instructional designer and they can take that 4-hour video and take out 20 minutes of it, I'm still okay. I'm allowed to, since it's essay, I'm allowed to revise and remix it, so I can take out 20 minutes of that section, and as long as I reference that it is share-alike, and I'm referencing that license, then I'm okay.
Okay.
You mean there's a certain percentage to it?
No, not even percentage-wise. I could take 30 seconds, or I could take the full 4 hours of the video.
But you have to reference it.
Yep, I have to reference it.
The full play, the place where, or the source where it's intact.
Another good example is, say if I have students looking at this video and taking out quotes, so they're going to quote the person that's being interviewed and have a sidebar to add to this textbook. I can't just take that and add it in as a sidebar and not stipulate that this is share-alike, because the whole textbook is CC BY. So if I don't stipulate that, I'm then, in essence, changing the license of that content because I'm quoting or pulling from that resource. Yes.
So what's the license that on the new thing you've developed here? What do
The new
you
textbook?
put on the bottom?
It's still CC BY.
CC BY.
You'll notice on mine it says unless otherwise noted.
Yeah.
Noted. This work is CC BY.
Right.
So there may be sections of it where I have a little footnote, and then when you go to the end, you say, oh, okay, this was pulled from this resource, and it is CC BY essay.
Okay. So you do have to put that somewhere in your document that there are pieces here that have a different licensing.
So that's one activity that we designed together. Can anyone think of something different that they would do there?
Avoid CC by essay.
They would just take the video out. They'd be like, no,
Find something
I'm gonna
else.
find someone else to interview and do it myself.
But what you just said is, I think is what Ken was asking earlier. So you have some material is CC by SA, and after you chop it up and then put it together, and it's a different format or different length, and now it's becoming CC by. So it's not SA anymore, although you do give the acknowledgement. So it's kind of open up what the original writer or creator wanted.
Maintaining it, yes.
Yeah. So now it's, who cares?
Well, really, what the author for essay intended is they don't want a publisher or some
Misuse.
corporate entity to take it and make it copyrighted. Okay, that's what they don't want to happen. So if I'm remixing it into an open resource that creator's very happy. And as long as I just make sure that I'm referencing that this section is still share alike, so that if someone goes to, because with the project management example, he took an open textbook and he remixed it. So that open textbook has content from other sources in there. And so as I'm remixing that, I'm looking and saying, okay, so this section is actually from here, and let's respect the original creators.
Can I share a stupid example? Let's say your CC by SA is actually a cartoon character, a teddy bear or something. And I would love to have you use it gazillion times so to get the icon recognition out there. So I will say CC by SA, but you tell people that who was the creator, but put it in everything you want.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's the advantage of doing this, and you get free distribution.
Yeah. Yep.
If that's what you want,
Yep.
right? You want your name, your brand to be built without any cost to you.
It's also the way to get a dominant design out there, because you need critical mass.
Yeah.
So you can actually do this with a long-term agenda of pulling it once you get technology built around it. So it becomes the dominant architecture. So it's a kind of a strategy to actually get the critical mass of enough people using it.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's kind of a little bit instrumental, but
Well, I can totally,
part of a person's thinking.
just out of respect for anyone who has to leave, but it's 5 after, I'm sorry. But just to build on that, and then I will close. Those of you who are in community engagement, I can totally see the application for this, because that gives you the engineered feedback loop with your community, and they're engaged in the development and all those things. So it's really creating that loop for you. So that's one of the huge benefits.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Wow. We can obviously talk. You're all experts now on Creative Commons licensing. Come teach with me next time, right? And thank you so much for being here and for going 5 minutes overtime with me. I know that Leo is organizing another session with Michelle Braley, who is my counterpart in libraries. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, we're going to have one of the librarians that focuses on OERs come in closer to the fall. And she'll help you find resources on OERs. And again, Kim can help you as well. So, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.